Let's go, Angie. You ready to get your pump on?
I'm ready. I'm Sergeant Angie Tetley.
And I'm Constable Brennan Martin.
Usually, you'll find us at recruiting events for the Calgary Police Service.
Like Run with a Recruiter, 49.
Between the two of us, we have over 40 years policing experience.
Over the course of both of our careers, we've met so many amazing coppers.
We want to share their experiences, learn from their challenges and difficult moments, and of course, celebrate their successes.
We're going to hear about real calls and investigations and the impact that they've had on the community and our members. We're also going to explore what led them to policing and get some behind-the-scenes information on the sometimes hilarious and sometimes heartbreaking and traumatic stories that happen every day in our amazing city.
Please join us while we find out why members of the Calgary Police Service have been called to serve.
Woo! I'm fired up. Let's get this going. Oh, good.
I put $50 on Dayle from immediately. Look at those forearms.
Do you know what? I'm going to have to put in a red folder.
Nope, I didn't see anything.
My God. Delta Bravo.
Buddy.
In the immortal words of Ric Flair, can I get a woo?
Oh my God.
See,
Well done.
That restraint was amazing.
We had to start this episode again because Brennan broke the mics the first
Founding
time.
member, number one member, current president of the Dayle Binet fan club. Best part of your day is and will always be Dayle Binet.
Dayle Binet.
Rock and
Brennan
roll.
makes rhymes about very few people, and Dayle Binet, best part of your day, is an infamous one that he repeats often.
Yeah,
So you should be honored.
I'm
by
very honored.
Brennan's Dr. Seuss rhymes.
but they're totally authentic. I've seen you. I've seen you during Run with a Recruiter. I've seen you on the road. I've seen you in the gym. You're an authentic person, Delta Bravo. And I'm pumped to be able to talk to you today. You have a tremendous heart. You're a tremendous mom. You're a great cop. You're a great human being. And the world needs to know more about Delta Bravo. So I'm just going to kick you off here. 50 years young.
51.
51.
I'm the baby of the group. Just wanted to mention that. You old people might get into some conversation about things that I don't know about because you're so much older than me. So
Nothing would make me
Age means
happier
nothing.
than to have a Netflix special to roast Tetley. I'll tell you right now, I got lots of material, but we're going to save that for a different day because we'd have to beep it all out. Having said that, Delta Bravo, 51, passed for way younger. Super fit, super awesome. Been on the job for 11 years. Spent time in 6-8 and SRO.
school resource officer.
School resource officer, thank you very much. Born in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa.
Yep.
Grew up during apartheid. Your father was a pastor and planted churches in South Africa. I want to know a lot more about that. And your mom was super traditional, and you have two sisters and a brother.
Yep. You got it.
So I think, Dayle, like your background, your history, where you grew up is so interesting and so unique. So we were hoping that you could sort of go back to when you were a kid and let us know, like tell us about where you grew up and how that was in South Africa and what you did as a kid and sort of how you moved into Canada.
Yeah, so born in South Africa and stayed there till about 7 or 8 years old. And then we moved to Zimbabwe. But in South Africa, yeah, it was during apartheid. And during that whole time, there were lots of things that were happening, obviously, that don't happen today. But people were segregated. People were pulled apart. Families were pulled apart, even depending on the texture of your hair.
Crazy.
For us, if that had continued, my family would be separated because my texture of hair is different than my mom's texture of hair. It's different than my dad's texture of hair. And because my family came, my dad's background is the Xhosa, my mom's background is the Zulu. Look at him, he's like, what? So
You like that a lot.
There's different textures, different colors, right? And of our skin tones and all of that kind of stuff. And if apartheid was still happening the way it was, our family would have been separated. Different color skin, different texture hair.
So you mentioned like when you were in school, you had those like some ID cards.
Yeah, so we had ID cards. Everybody had identification cards in South Africa. And in those cards, there were all these boxes that you would check based on what is the texture of your hair, what is the color of your skin, and all of those kind of things. So people were categorized.
And not just necessarily black and white, but like different shades
different
of,
shades of it as well, right? So you were, to be blunt, it was like you're a colored, or you're an other colored, or you're black, or you're like all these different categories of how things were. So that's how I grew up in South Africa. But in school then, the schools that we went to, I didn't actually walk into a library till I was 30 years old, because in schools, we weren't allowed to go into certain rooms. Like, we weren't allowed to go to the libraries because the libraries were for the white people only, and like those kind of things. There were so many different categories and so many things you were allowed and you weren't allowed to do. But yeah, I was afraid to go into a library till I came here to Canada. And still, it took some time.
We talked about when you were a little, like kindergarten sort of thing, how they had the small schools.
Yes.
And you mentioned that you didn't, like, what did you do in school when you were in kindergarten?
Nothing.
Nothing.
So our school was made up of 2 classrooms, and it was everything from what we would consider grade 1 or kindergarten, all the way up through what we would, like, if we were to kind of look at us, like about grade 8 or grade 9. And so the teachers spent a lot of the time on the older kids, because the older kids were going to be moving to the next grade. Yeah. So the younger kids were just left. So I didn't learn how to read until I was probably 7, 8 years old. When we went to Zimbabwe was the first time I had actually started learning how to read. And by that time I was already, I think I was in grade 2. At that point, learning how to read. I had no idea what these things were on the page, because when we were back home,
like letters, you mean?
Letters, numbers, I had no idea. And it wasn't like those days, and no diss to my parents, but those days, parents weren't necessarily trying to get their kids started on, books and reading and numbers and all of that kind of stuff before kids went to school. So that was the deal. So we had 2 classrooms, and those classrooms were just, again, filled with everybody from kindergarten all the way up to grade 8, grade 9. And the classroom that we were in, we were kids just literally sitting around leafing through books, magazines, cutting out pictures and pasting them, and playing with plasticine, like playing with, and playing, just sitting there, not learning, just playing.
Wow.
Because that's what you did.
You have a pretty traumatic memory from your time in school, where you had the courage to stand up for what was right.
But before that, let's go. The move from South Africa to Zimbabwe was first, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
That's a really interesting story. Can you tell us about that story?
Yes. So I was 7. So I was 7 when we moved. My dad decided to move us to Zimbabwe. Better opportunities there for our family, and he had done some traveling back and forth to Zimbabwe, and decided he wanted to go and do a church plant there. So church planting is just starting a new church in Zimbabwe. And so during that trip, like, we'd never really gone anywhere like that, massive as a family, but during that trip, we actually ended up just on the other side of the border of South Africa into Zimbabwe on the Day of Independence in 1980. And so Zimbabwe's independence, because Zimbabwe was Rhodesia,
right,
and they were going through the fighting. And the Day of Independence, we crossed the border to go into Zimbabwe. And the most distinctive thing, because people always ask, well, when did you decide you want to become a police officer? Yeah. It was that day. So we're driving.
I love this story.
We're driving, and we're in a convoy, because the fighting is still happening. Because not everybody at this point realizes and understands that now Zimbabwe is now Zimbabwe, and it was Rhodesia, that it was their Day of Independence. So there's still some fighting in the bush. So they had to actually put us in a convoy. So there's military vehicles in front of us, a bunch of vehicles, civilian vehicles, and then military vehicles behind us. And it was just like the movies, where they have like these tarps over the tops of the trucks as we're going through. And at one point, they pull off on the side of the road, and some guys get out, they run down the sides, and they're telling all of us as passengers, get on the deck of your vehicle, So you're sitting in your seatbelts, and back then there wasn't always seatbelts, so sometimes in the back of back of the car. And you get onto the deck of the vehicle, and these guys run out into the bush, and you just hear some shooting and stuff like that. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, and I had zero fear. There was something about that moment that just went, I love that. I want to make people feel safe like that, because that's what happened to me. I felt like my family was safe. That day.
Because of the soldiers.
Because of the soldiers.
Yeah.
They got out, they did whatever they needed to do. They got back into their vehicles. We got back, and we were driving down the road, and I remember thinking, that's what I want to do. I want to do something like that.
I love that story.
Yeah.
So it was 7 years old. That is a terrifying event. And you're like, I'm not scared. That's what I want to do.
No fear at all. Yeah. There wasn't any residual thinking, nothing that was like, what was going, none of that. It was just like, man, that felt good. And later on in life, I remember reading Maya Angelou says, and I might butcher this, but she has a quote that says, people won't often remember what you say. They won't often remember what you do, but they will always remember how you make them feel.
100%.
And that was it for me, that moment. They made me feel safe. 7 years old, traveling to another country. And that's what I determined I was going to do with my life. For me, it was either the military or police.
Yeah.
What was the celebration like when you finally got to Zim and you were there to celebrate Independence Day?
It was interesting because we weren't necessarily part of that, because we're coming from another country.
You're an outsider, yeah.
Completely an outsider. So we rock up. Some of the people that were really excited about us being there, or people that had helped us to be able to get there, there was a home set up for us and a place for us to go and stay. But we literally got there, and you unpack and you hear stuff going on. But it wasn't like nowadays where we're like, let's see what's going on and let's scroll through there. There wasn't no TikTok or nothing like that back then, right? You hear what you hear. You can see there were lots of flags and there were people, up and down. But again, we were tired, we were exhausted. We get in there. It was only the next day, I think, where you kind of process what had just happened. Because again, you're exhausted. You're driving 30-something hours in a vehicle. But yeah, it wasn't the same as now where everything is televised and you have an idea of what's going on.
So much information.
Yeah.
So now you're in Zimbabwe. Tell us about like your childhood in Zimbabwe, like what was different, what was school like?
Yeah. So school was, I think, a little bit, it was difficult for me starting out because I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know how to read. I didn't know my numbers. I just go in there and I see other people doing things and I see them, trying things and coming up with answers or whatever, and I had no idea. So I was always a fairly happy kid. And then it gets heavy because you don't know that you don't know. And then you get tested, and it's different than it is now. Here, nowadays, people are encouraged for the things that they struggle with, or they make arrangements for kids to do something different. Back then it was, well, you must be stupid, that's why you don't know.
Right.
And I didn't know any different, and I didn't think I was stupid. So you just kind of go with, oh, okay, maybe that's what it is, right? And you just kind of go through it. You got to remember, I was 7 when we came in there, so now it's like 7 coming into maybe grade 2, so turning 8. Like, that's old for not knowing how to read and not knowing your numbers.
Yeah.
And so, but again, you just kind of get through. I spent a lot of time asking the kids around me what it was before the teacher actually clued in that, oh, she doesn't actually know how to read. So my sister would read stuff to me. I would get home and she would read it to me so that I would understand what was happening. And she spent a little bit of time with me, but not with numbers. Like, again, nobody thinks, oh, that kid doesn't know their numbers, because everybody else is in the same, so you kind of feel like a little bit more of an imposter than most kids would feel at that age, right?
Totally.
But I don't even know, I don't even know how I process that. You just
do, and then you just move on?
You just do, and then you move on. Yeah. So I remember one teacher, I think it was grade 3 or grade 4. I don't even know how I got through all of those, but grade 4, it was a teacher that knew our family now, so it had been a couple of years. And she took me aside and went through some basics, just layering and layering and layering. And I remember thinking that there was just something special about her in my mind because I felt seen.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like somebody saw me for who I was and what I was struggling with, as opposed to deciding that I belonged in a category and not knowing why I wasn't making it there. So, Mrs. Abrams, she saw me.
And you never forget her.
I'll never
Those
forget
people
her.
that have that impact on your life.
Well, she asked me what I wanted to do at that point, and because of who she was in my life at that point, I said, I want to be a teacher. So she gave me a blackboard duster, her old blackboard duster, and her chalk. And I went home and I told my dad, the teacher gave me these things. And he said, well, you need a place to write on a chalkboard. And so we took our old table tennis table and he turned it upright. It came in 3 pieces. And he turned it upright and that was my chalkboard. So we'd play table tennis on the weekends. But then during the week, I would come home and do my homework, line up my dolls and pretend that I was the teacher. And that did something to me.
Yeah.
It gave me something else to think about myself rather than that I was dumb and that I didn't belong and I didn't fit.
Yes.
Because she giving me those things meant I could do something different. And it gave me motivation to do better.
And that empowered you to do more,
It did.
to be more, and that's led to where you're at today. Did you finish your time in Zimbabwe? Did you finish all your school in Zim before you moved to Canada?
Yeah, I did. Not all of it. So I ended up coming in at grade 10. But again, that whole process of schooling. So after that particular time, then you move into, I think it was about grade 6, where kind of the next, I guess when you look back at it, you're like, this is the battle for my mindset.
Yeah.
Who am I going to become as an adult? Those battles happen when you're children.
For sure.
So that next battle for my mindset, if we're going to call it anything, was when I was in grade 6, and we had a teacher that was a little bit of a tyrant.
Yes,
And-
this is the story you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was, again, that's very distinctive moments. So this distinctive moment was, again, it came down to numbers for me, and because, again, there was lack of support and all of that. However, we used to stand, and a lot of people who've gone through this will know what this is about. So we used to stand behind our desks when the teachers walk in, out of respect. Everybody's in uniforms, right? That's how we did things. We were in uniform, and I remember standing there, and the teacher used to go through the times table up and down the rows. So 1 times 1, and then she'd select the specific timetable that you're going to do. And 6s and 7s, I don't know what it was back then, but
Mine was 7 and 8.
6 times table, 7 times table. They were difficult. Like the brain just wasn't quick, And I remember going through, and you look and you count which one are you going to be. So you're trying to remember, and you're like counting on your fingers, which one is it going to be? And I remember it came to me, and I just blanked. It was a total blank. And this was a while ago. I'm not looking for anybody to go, oh, poor Dayle. None of that. But yeah. So she got angry. And she was a very physical teacher. So she got angry, grabbed me by my uniform, and literally shoved me out the doors. I remember falling off of because we had the sidewalk, right? Sidewalks were like the classroom, and then they had a sidewalk across next to all the doors where we all would line up. She shoves me out, tripped off the sideboard, chucks me. I land in the dirt, and it was right next to the washrooms, and it was such a distinctive memory. I remember sitting there, all the kids in the inside of the classroom are looking at you because you just got thrown out because you're dumb or whatever it is. Land on the ground, and I remember thinking, I shouldn't stay here. I don't know why. It's like, I'm not going to stay here. Okay, but it's like, well, what do I do now? Yeah. I don't want to go back into the classroom because what if she's mad at me, right? Because you have no idea. You're a child.
You're a little kid, yeah.
So I stand up, And I look at my uniform and it's like dust and dirt and whatever. And I just remember the smell of the washrooms. I don't know why that's a very distinctive memory. It's just smells like old stale pee and all that. And I know it's a bit graphic, but there's just something that connected with me. And I'm like, no.
Not today.
Not today. This is not where I belong. I don't know what she thinks of me and I don't know what's expected of me, but this is not me. And I remember dusting myself off and I was just thinking like, what do I do? Because kids don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't know what's next. And I remember thinking, I have my dad. And my dad will know what to do. And my dad wouldn't put up with this. This is not right.
Yeah.
That's not the way I was raised. You don't treat people like this. And I remember thinking, well, if I get into trouble, so let it be. Right? So I walked over to the, thank you.
You have so much passion. I could listen
You're
to you
so
talk
real.
forever. I'm like, next.
So I remember walking up to the principal's office and I told him, I was standing by the door and it's like they just ignore you, right?
Yeah.
You're just a kid. We're kids. That's why I became an SRO, because kids mean something.
You got that right.
So I remember standing there thinking, I got to tell him.
Yeah.
And I went into his office and
This is the
said,
principal?
This is the principal.
Yeah.
Went to the principal's office and I said, I need you to talk to my dad. Why? What's wrong? Blah, blah, blah. And there were a couple of times, he said, no. And I'm like, no, I'm not leaving here. I'm not leaving here until I get to talk to my dad. So I ended up calling my dad. Dad came over and I didn't even know what to say. Like, he's just looking at my uniform. And my dad was gracious and strong.
As a dad should be.
Gracious and strong. So anyway, he said, okay, just stay here, sit in the principal's office. And he went to talk to the teacher. I have no idea what was happening.
You talked to the teacher or the principal?
He went to the teacher.
Love it.
And I don't know what conversation was, but I sat there in the principal's office. There was just a feeling of, you just breathe easy because you know, okay, that got sorted out. I don't know what happened, but Dad dealt with it.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
Again.
a good dad.
It's a good dad. Just, you know, taking care
Yeah.
of what shouldn't be. And so that was a very distinct memory for me. But I remember the moment when I was on the ground saying, no, I'm not going to stay here. I need to get up.
Yeah.
I need to get up. So
Dayle, you know I'm a big fan, obviously. And I'm super pumped that we're able to share who you are. You're such a passionate and authentic person. To be able to open up like that and to tell those stories, and to show your struggles and what you did and how you overcame, it seems to me like these are all just building blocks for your amazing strength and your character that you are now. You know, I dig the Dayle. I'm super pumped that we're able to share who you are with the public so that they can see the kind of cops that we have working for and serving the people of Calgary. You are truly a servant. I was going to say servant king, servant queen.
Queen.
Yeah, you are a servant
Yes.
queen. You're amazing. Thank you for that. Can you explain the nexus between how you were in Zimbabwe and how you ended up in Canada?
yes. I was 15 when we made the move. Interestingly enough, again, our family was really open-hearted and very forward-thinking. My parents were very forward-thinking, even though they were fairly traditional. And we had somebody contact my dad and say, hey, because he had done a couple of trips to Canada, said, hey, would you come and help us with some of the church stuff that they were doing in Toronto? And so that's where that all started. And so we raised some of the funds. We didn't have all the money, but we had our tickets already lined up, ready to go. And again, because of my family being faith-based, my dad was like, no, we're going. And we were like, okay, well, we don't have all the money. Tickets are bought, things were sold or whatever. And 2 weeks before we were supposed to head out, somebody came to us out of the blue and said, hey, I just feel like I'm supposed to give you guys this much money or whatever. It was exactly the amount that we needed for our tickets to be
What?
done. It was probably the equivalent of $10,000.
Oh my gosh.
It's God.
I know. So there's some stuff there, right? Yeah, 100%.
Weird.
So anyway, so we ended up getting on the plane, coming to Canada, and we landed in Toronto. And it was an interesting battle. There were some things that had happened with my sister, and we ended up transitioning there. People didn't necessarily like it, but we did have family out west in the town of Three Hills. Small
Good old
town,
Three
good
Hills.
old Three Hills. So we were able to then transition and go through. But tell you what, when we landed in Toronto, it must have taken about 3 or 4 months of crying every second day because it was so different.
Yeah.
The people,
Like to go back home.
Oh yeah, to go back home. The people were different, you know. People were. It's such a culture shock to come here, and people are not just in it. Like you just feel so isolated.
Yes.
You know, a lot of us that come from other countries, everyone's in and out of your homes. You've got family surrounding you. You've got, there's just a lot more interaction. And you come here and it just feels so isolated. So, yeah, at 16 years old, you're just, I turned 16 the year we got here. I think that was 89. But yeah, it's such an interesting journey. I was more extroverted.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, cool. New
Not
friends.
you. Not Delta Bravo.
Shocker, right? So, but yeah, so for me, it was like, okay, new friends, new journey, new things, embraced it, you know, and some of the rest of my family weren't. They're not introverts, and so or extroverts, and so it was a little bit more difficult for them, but
Yeah.
other than that, yeah.
So you're in Three Hills for high school.
Three Hills for high school.
And what were you into? What was your jam in high school?
My jam in high school was mostly getting into anything sports related.
Yeah.
Because I could do that. We didn't have, again, we're coming in, still fairly new. That was a year into Canada, we moved to Three Hills. So I didn't have anything else. Like when I was back home, I was into the sports, rugby, field hockey, tennis. Again, it was anything and everything that was individual sport because I was self-competitive.
Yeah.
When it came to other people, I didn't want to hurt them because as a young child, I was always told by the boys, you play too hard. But I wanted to hang out with the guys and play there with the guys because you could be rough and tumble and get dirty, and you know, they didn't care that their hair and their ponytail was pulled out or nothing. You could just get in there. So I was always on the bikes with the boys, and you know, so sports was my thing, and individual sports, again, because I could be self-competitive. I didn't hurt anybody except for field hockey and rugby. So that was
And rugby, that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Yeah. Beautiful violence.
Yes.
Yeah.
So now you're in Three Hills. You're going through school there.
Yeah.
Where and at what point does policing hit the brain, and how?
It was always there. It was always just there, but coming in from a different country, you don't have family members or resources to connect those things together.
Right.
What you think you want to do, and how do I get there? You don't have the next step. You don't have the how. Mm-hmm. So you just figure that at some point something's going to work out. But we did have events that would happen at Three Hills, and the RCMP would come in and they would run the circuit. They would run the A-Prep. It wasn't the A-Prep.
The pair.
It was the
test.
pair. Yeah, so they would run the pair. And every time, I'd think about it or whatever. And then there was this one year, I don't even remember what grade I was in. This one year that I'm like, I gotta go do it. And I went in and I was just thinking, okay, I gotta beat every other girl here. I had no idea what that looked like. We'd never tried any of the things. I was just like, I've just gotta be like the top chick. That was like,
Totally.
I gotta beat every guy. I had no idea what their numbers were or whatever. So it was like, all or nothing. And I remember going through, and we were on a band that was doing the music for some of the stuff as well. And so I went through, did that thing. I was gassed, absolutely gassed when I was done, because you leave it all out on the court, right?
Yeah.
So gassed when we were done. I felt super pumped. And then we were on stage doing some of the music, because grade 11 and grade 12, I was into the music and all that kind of stuff too. But then they presented the T-shirts, and I won. I won that police fastest time T-shirt.
Sick.
That point. And then it came from here, it came right
out to the front.
Front to the forehead again. I'm like, oh, man, I gotta try and figure out a way to do that.
But there's still no real pathway. Like, you don't really see how that works.
Yeah. Yeah, no connection. You don't know, are you allowed to talk to the police officers on the street? Like, you have no idea how to bridge that gap.
Because it's probably very different, the policing in South Africa,
Yeah.
compared to what you were seeing
Yes.
here in
Yeah.
Canada. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after high school, you've still got this bug that bit you when you were 7 years old.
Yep.
Now it's rebitten you when you were 16 or in
Yep.
high school anyways.
Yep.
So what happened after high school?
After high school, sometimes when you just let go and you don't make a plan, and you don't actually follow a vision, or you don't know how, life just happens. So I ended up working at the Bible college that's there, Prairie Bible College. And I was at the front office there in the recruiting and the admissions side of things. And ended up going through that, and then got married, and then ended up moving to Calgary. I got married,
You got married young.
I got married, 21.
21. It's pretty young.
Now that I think about it, it is young.
Like, how old's your daughter now?
He's 20.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine that?
Yeah. I cannot imagine that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, that's a different thought. But yeah, got married at 21, and then, you just live life, and was involved there, and then still involved in the church.
You planted a church in Okotoks, did you not?
Did a plant in Okotoks,
Yeah.
Music director and youth pastor and associate pastor of that church, yeah.
All right.
And in Okotoks,
In Okotoks.
you've had your babies now?
Yeah, so by the time we got to, so I had my babies in Calgary, and then we moved to Three Hills when I had the last one. So by the time we moved to Okotoks, I had 3 children.
Right.
Already, 2 boys and a girl.
Right.
Yeah.
Planted a church.
And planted
Going to the gym.
Going to the gym. Still keeping up with the fitness. It was the thing that just gets you through, right?
Not a police officer yet.
Not a police officer.
What's next?
So we end up going through an interesting thing, and I won't necessarily get into that, just an interesting dynamic with the church that we were part of. And we'll put it this way. I received an opportunity to think about what I really wanted to do.
Copy that.
We'll put it that way.
All right.
And that opportunity came in a way that you're not quite thinking that's what it was. But it was a hard and fast cut off of that, and now what's next? And at that point, I was really good friends with, because she was coming to the church with a police officer here in Calgary Police, and Sally Zirk and I would go running. And because of how things had worked out, previously with the church and the opportunity that came my way, I would go running, and we'd run hard, and I'd get onto the side because, again, I'm struggling from this cut off that had happened. Struggling, I'd run, and I'd start bawling my eyes off, and I'd be puking, and she'd just stand there, and she's like, "You done?" That's my British accent.
That's so Sally. Are you done?
Are you done?
Are you done?
Are you done? She teases me.
Let's
she says
go.
I have a crap accent. I don't think so.
I think it's gorgeous.
I think it's bang on. And then I'd be like, yeah. And she's like, come on then.
Come on.
18K. But again, when you go through transitions, any of the transitions you go through in life, it is hard pushing through.
Yeah.
It's hard pushing through.
You're working through some pain, you're working through some personal trauma, and you have this friend that you've met through church.
Yes.
And she's able to be there for you as a rock, but also be like, are you done?
Holding space.
Yeah.
But we're not going to be here for a long time.
You're not gonna stay here.
Yeah.
We got places to be.
We got places to be.
So tell us about that relationship and what came from that.
So I remember the one day, I had said to her, I've always wanted to do marathons and half marathons or whatever. And so she said, okay, let's train for one. And we're running. I think we ran, it was, the ramping up before the cool down, before the race. And I had said to her, I've always wanted to be a police officer. And she says, well, what's stopping you? I don't know. I just don't know what to do. She's like, you still can do it. And I remember thinking, at this point I was 39.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, there's no way. Like at my age?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, we need that. Your age is perfect because you're still fit. You still have a passion for helping people. And your age actually brings that maturity. It brings that life experience. Yep. You've gone through some stuff. So when you're talking to people, you understand where they're at. At that point too, going through that, marriage is breaking down. There's some stuff going on there, right? So I was in it, man.
Yeah.
I was in it.
Yeah.
And it gave me the opportunity to sit back and go, what do I want with my life? Like all of whatever it is up till now, that wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Right.
And you get to those transitions where, is this really what I wanted for my life? And then I'm like, no, it's not. So what am I going to do with it? And I remember Sally saying, okay, I'm only going to tell you this part. Everything else has to be you. I don't want your family thinking that I pushed you into anything. So she's like, all the information is on the website. You've got this. If you want anything, ask me for it.
Yeah.
And I said, train me. And typical, she's like, okay. Yeah. I love she probably Sally. Did a little, she's like, let's do it. Let's do it. And so we would spend tons of time in her garage and challenge each other and have some fun. She calls me her stupid friend. So I'm the friend that will do like step aerobics for 90 minutes until my calves are...
She's on those trampolines and...
Because neither of us would stop.
No,
I'm like, you're not stopping, I'm not stopping.
No.
So calves are cramping and 90 minutes of high intensity step aerobics. That was a few years ago. But yeah, so she ended up doing all of that and I ended up coming, she said, try everything, ask people questions, get into there. And so that was that gateway for me, that opportunity to move things forward and get a chance to actually look at policing.
So what were some of the things that you tried, like while you were preparing, while you were exploring this as a potential career at almost 40 years of age?
Yeah,
so what
39.
did you do?
There were information sessions that were being held. So there was also a Women in Policing conference. That happened.
I remember
you were
that.
probably
I
there.
remember that.
Yeah. And we always want to know, do you remember me? Was I memorable?
Of course.
Nah, bro.
Tell the story. Tell the story.
Okay, so I remember the Women in Policing conference. And I think there was one that I went to. We were sitting around the tables and I was asking a whole lot of questions. And there was also a British lady that was there. And I remember thinking, she's so sweet. Like she just had her little rosy cheeks and just a sweet, and I thought, man, she's sweet. She can do this job. Like I'm kind, I'm nice. I can probably do this job too, but I was like,
oh, you don't have to be a robot?
So badass.
Yeah.
I loved that. And then she actually put me on to the, I think it was 100 years they were celebrating of women in policing.
Yeah.
So that conference, by then I had gone to a couple of information sessions. I had gone to that other conference and then the Women in Policing conference came up. And I was ready. I was now focused. I was like, where they say a pit bull with lipstick. I was like this, like face forward, tell me what this is about, because I'm coming in.
Yeah.
Like I was like
kicking
literally.
that door open.
Yeah.
I went in there and I remember thinking, it doesn't matter who's in there. This is about me finding out, is this for me or not? And I went in. So I went there. I had my shirt was ironed, pressed. I had everything. I was
matched your intensity. You were ready to go.
It matched mine. I was 100%. Yeah, I was professional. I was driven to I want to know what this is about. Because I have 3 kids, a marriage that's falling apart, and I need to know, this is it. This is my transition. I'm 39 years old. I don't have time to be messing around. I need to know, is this for me or not? So I remember asking questions, and Denise was there. So Denise was, and I remember after a few minutes, I'm like, this lady's following me around.
Denise Barlow from recruiting.
She recognizes the talent. That's
I'm
what's going
pretty sure
on.
I
She's a
stood out
recruiting
like
officer,
I
yeah.
stood out like a sore thumb for sure, because I was just in there, and quite intense about finding out what it's all about. So they had some firearm stuff that we could do, and so again, it was like, who wants to volunteer? My hand wasn't just up, like it was all the way up. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
I need to find out, right?
Got to pause. Every course that we've ever taken with this one. It's,
Yeah.
It's something I've learned, man. Like,
So you feel that?
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Totally.
So my hand was up. So it was like petting the canine dog. I was all up in there. They obviously had a very kind canine.
yeah, it was not the mean ones.
Everything that they did, I took the opportunity to go in and try it. And my attitude was, this is it. I need to know.
Yeah.
Right? And I need to have all the experiences. So I remember even fitness was in there, and they were like, who wants to try this? And I'm like handing off my stuff, rolling up my very nicely, rolling up my
Who do you
sleeves.
hand your stuff off to?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
at
that
the
was
start?
different. That
Yeah.
was different. There's
Okay.
some good stuff. There's some good stuff there. So I think because I stood out, I ended up having the news come and ask me. There were 2 news crews that came in and asked if they could do an interview. Actually, I think one was internal here, and then one was CTV News. Now, I was working at a dental office. I didn't tell my boss yet. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be televised. So I called and I said, hey, called my supervisor and I said, hey, just so you know, I'm at this Women in Policing conference. I've been thinking about policing and there might be an interview on
You might see me on TV.
FYI, boss.
Yeah,
I
and
quit.
it was not the reply that I thought I was going to get. She was so pumped.
That's awesome.
She was like, oh my God, this would be so good for you. And I could see you doing this. And I'm like, okay, that's a green light, right? So yeah, so in doing the interview, so I'd done lots of stuff. I'd gone in during the SCT piece. You know, they were asking, hey, who wants to do this again? My hand is up. I'm the first woman. Shoes are off. I'm walking onto the mats. And there was an officer that was there, and I ended up...
Cold on his shoulder.
Yeah. Well, not that
Hold
one.
my bag.
No, this is a different one. In the SCT, I ended up taking somebody down because I tripped people because I was rough and tumble when I was younger. So I tripped this guy, and I'm doing, you know... And then later on, actually years later, he said, man, you hit me in the junk that day. He remembered me.
That's
Dayle,
awesome.
Yeah.
Did you get what you needed that day? Did you get the information that you needed to know, do I want to apply? Is this direction that I want to go? When did you apply? Did you get the information that you wanted? Did you stay focused? Tell us about that.
Yes and no, because you always have that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Who am I? Who am I to do this? I got everything that I needed, all the questions that I needed answered. However, I still needed to make the decision on whether or not I was going to do what I needed to do. So I had to process, because again, I was changing a lot of things in my life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was making some massive changes, completely a different direction. I was erasing the X, and I was embracing a Y, because the Y was the new thought of this new thing, right? And transitions are always the hardest. So I got what I needed, but I still had to make that leap and make the decision.
Yeah.
So you made the decision. How did you make that decision? And what was the application process and recruit classes like for you?
So the application, of course, it's long and it's grueling, but I understood why, because I'm like, you can't just have anyone become a police officer.
Yeah.
It's got to be in your heart. It's got to be in your guts. This is not just a job.
Gotta have that calling.
You got to have that calling. It's got to be something that you've processed through. So put in the application, again, I got some help from Sally, but she's like, I'm not telling you what to do. You've got to make that decision.
Good for her. Yeah.
So went through that. got all the way. BDI interview was the place where they're like, well, you seem like a really nice person. And I'm like, have you seen my dark side? No. Yeah, they were like, yeah, you seem like a really nice person. And I remember, it's not advisable, but I remember saying, because there were 3 members, and I remember sitting there going, this is it. Like, yeah, I am a nice person, but I can do this job, damn it. Yeah. And I remember going, you have no idea who I am. What? And I'm like, you don't know who I am. I said, I can do this job. And I remember saying, you might be able to stop me here, but I'm not stopping. This is what I want, and I'm just going to keep coming.
Oh, you're so
And I sat back, and I'm like, oh, crap.
Showed them where the horse kicked you, and then they're just sitting back.
Later on, again, I had conversations with these people, and he's like, that was the moment. I'm like, okay, she's sturdy.
No fire.
So when you start
fire.
classes, like you were probably like it was unusual because you're like a little bit older.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was your role in the class? Like you mentioned, you were like the class mom kind of.
I know.
Thing.
Everywhere I go, people call me mom, and yeah, and I don't think it was for any other reason than that I understood what was happening. I didn't have, like, you gotta remember that coming from doing nothing schooling wise to classes, like your level of expectation of your learning, how you do things, what you're doing, how you're doing them, when you're doing them. Like the timing is short.
Yeah.
Like everything just goes.
Drinking through a fire hose.
100%.
Yeah.
And so to be able to process that, and again, I was going through struggles at home. Like I was at separation. I still had 3 kids that are going to school. So everyone else in classes is like, oh, they get to go home and their parents are taking care of them and, shining their boots and now they have to do that. And I'm like, I'm going home. I'm helping with homework. I'm cooking a meal. I'm dealing with a separation. I'm going through all of this stuff. I'm still learning what I need to learn.
Yeah.
So don't be whining about shining your boots to me because...
and also kicking everyone's butt in
and
fitness.
doing so amazing, up the hill. 2 of us were the older ones, first up the hill, doing that kind of stuff. It was, so it was grueling, but I feel like something opened up for me because, again, this is what I wanted to do. This is what I was meant to do. And so it opened up a whole bunch of stuff for me.
So, like all people, you remember that day when you get that shiny badge, and then you go out to your first district. Which district was your first district?
8.
8 district, down south there off of 162 Avenue.
Yeah, because I lived just out of town.
Everybody remembers their first arrest or arrest that's sort of has burned that memory into your brain. Do you remember that for yourself?
I do. I remember it was a busy day. You're all done, whatever, and you're thinking, okay, coming to the end of the day, whatever, and call comes in for a theft down in the Shaughnessy area, and this guy had gone into a couple of places. He just goes in, grabs some stuff, puts it in his bag, walks to the next store, grabs some stuff, puts it in his bag, and in my mind, I'm thinking, no, just go away. Because again, it's my first time. It would have to be me. Nobody's available. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's me, right? You're on it. So I go, take the call. Nobody's backing you. So you're like, I got to put on my big girl pants now, right? This is finally, it's me.
Yeah.
It's just me, and I need to be good. So you square your shoulders, you find that courage, and I rock up, and true enough, he's walking out of the stores. I go and I grab him, I say,
that's the guy.
You're under arrest. Yeah, he was very distinctive.
Yeah.
He had dreadlocks and like a bright orange shirt. So I'm like, yeah. So he walks out, grab him, like, you're under arrest. And he looks at me and I'm like, no, you're under arrest. Come over to my car. And I think I must have been like, you are under arrest. Come over to my... He's like, are you new?
Everybody's gotten that one.
I'm like, put the bags down.
Never mind.
I am not answering those questions yet. Right? And so anyway, you go through that process. And I'm like, okay, handcuff him. Right? You go through all of that stuff. And so I remember that moment. And just becoming a big girl again.
You know, you've been on a job a long time now. We all have a lot of different memories. I know that, you know, when we're having lunch or just when we're discussing what our memories are over the course of our careers, we all have a whole bunch of different memories, and every once in a while they pop up just like whack-a-mole. I know you were talking about a 07, which is a suicide call that you attended where there was possibly a shotgun in the house. Was that call when you first got on the job, or was it after a few years?
It was after a couple of years
Yeah.
on the job. And again, this job, you get the privilege of adding value to people's lives and helping people. But part of that comes with some of the yucky things that you see and some of the yucky things that you do. But I remember this one, not because it was anything super yucky, right? It wasn't anything that you look at and you go, there was trauma there. In that particular one, you look at it and you go, man, it's just a reminder. After a couple of years on the job, you start, you know, you deal with the same people sometimes, a lot of times. And in this case, it had to do with a 6-year-old girl. And I remember there was the, you know, possibility of a shotgun in the house, and, you know, Dad was doing some drugs and all this kind of stuff. And somebody had called from the neighbor's house, and the little girl was still in there. And you go in with a different feeling when you feel like you're going to protect somebody else, and they don't know any different, man.
Yeah.
She's not supposed to know any different at 6.
Yeah.
You know, so you remember, you go through, and all of your fear. I know a lot of times people will say, aren't you afraid? I'm like, first of all, they train the fear right out of you. You have an understanding of what your job is, and you are built to have the courage to do it.
Yeah.
That's why you have to be called.
Yeah.
Because there's a courage that comes with the calling. And you can't have the one without the other. When you don't have the courage, and courage doesn't mean I'm kamikaze or whatever. Courage means I'm gonna do it even though I'm scared shitless.
Yeah.
That's what courage is. I'm going in anyway.
Yeah.
Right? And you have the training and you trust your friends, right? So we go in to the house, possibility the shotgun, and I mean, you kind of go in and everybody else goes this way, and I'm looking at that kid. I remember thinking, I don't know who's behind me. I have friends behind me, because I saw her. She's standing in the middle of the living room, and she's just looking at all of these cops coming into her home.
Guns out.
Guns out. Yes, guns out, shotguns out, everybody.
Rapid intervention style.
Yes, 100%. So I go in, I'm going straight to her, and the thought came, what if he's up there? I'm like, my friends have got me. Yo, there's a camaraderie that comes with this job. You do not get this in other jobs. Like, I might hate you, you know, I might decide to cuss you out, and then when we're going to the call, we're flash to flash.
Totally.
So I remember going in, picking her up and say, come with me. And I go over to the corner, like where the TV and there's a concrete wall. And then you let your friends do all the rest of the business, whatever else needed to happen. But in that moment, I was like, I am shielding you with everything literally everything I've got, right? So
Including physically.
Physically shielding her, because I thought if anything is happening, I at least have this on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the moment. And just talking to her quietly in the corner there.
While mayhem is happening.
Mayhem is happening behind me. And
Tasks are being done, jobs are being completed
yes.
in a systematic way.
Yes. With kindness still.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of times people look at this job and we all look like a bunch of horrible tyrant people. But man, in order to be gentle, kind, structured, think through your tactics, still be mindful of what's happening around you, be kind to the fact that we know that if I come hard with somebody, they're gonna, right, I'm a reflection of you.
Totally.
And, you know, again, people don't have a clear understanding. This is not an easy job. But yeah, and the one line that struck me on that call was, you know, why are we here? Show me your place. Show me. And she gets up on the counter, and this is where Dad does his cocaine. And I was like, oh, my heart.
Just that she knows that.
The fact that she knows it. It's on the counter where she sits and has her breakfast.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's why we do this.
Yeah, and it sort of leads into just like the communication skills, right, that you have to have as a police officer. And I was hoping, like the way we talk to people and the importance of understanding and communicating is so important as a police officer. So I was hoping we could get into your current project, which specifically deals with communication. Could you tell us about what you're doing right now? Sort of, I know you're on patrol right now, but on the side, on all your spare time, you're working on a communication mentorship program for applicants, for new applicants. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Communication is such a huge thing on this job, and it's not just written and it's not just the written communication.
Of course.
It's the ability to understand quickly, respond quickly, and respond in such a way that people can understand you, but also that you can be understood. Because me talking to you, no big deal. We can talk all day. Yeah. You put me under a little bit of pressure.
The stress changes everything.
It changes everything. And I'm, coming from South Africa, I don't necessarily have as much of an accent. But because of the stress that I had from reading, when I start to read, my accent comes out quite thick. Or when you get under a little bit of stress, people say you have, a fairly good accent on the radio because you're under a little bit of stress. Yeah. So we have people all of us that come from other countries have those kind of experiences where our communication just easily on an everyday basis is different than when we're under pressure. Our accents come out a little bit thicker. Our communication skills, our ability to move very quickly from understanding our own language into the English language, it's got to happen really quickly. And so one of the things that I did was just come up with a mentorship program where we're explaining to people and just giving people that kind of understanding. Because sometimes people will go through classes, your expectation of learning is through the roof. Everything is moving quickly. And you can't just understand on this level. You've got to be thinking and processing. Does this fit here? Does that fit here? The criminal code, how does this, there's nuances and things that are kind of in the middle of, embedded in this job that are all in the English language that you have to be able to process quickly. And so the mentorship program is just to build an understanding. Just to build that understanding of the expectation of the English language and how steep it is in order to be able to respond very, very quickly in English. And again, there's no time on this job. There's no time. There's no time to still be thinking and processing. You have to be moving to that level. So it is a very high level of expectation.
Yeah, we have, it's so important, and when applicants come in here who speak English as a second language or who have 3, 4, 5 different languages, it's so valuable to us as an organization.
Yes.
But the reality is the majority of the calls and the people that you deal with in Calgary with the Calgary Police Service are going to be in English and are going to be high stress.
Yes.
So the importance of speaking, communicating, reading, writing, speaking on the radio in English is the focus of what you're trying to teach these people before they get into classes and then potentially struggle.
Yes.
We want people to be successful.
Yes.
And so you've done this a couple of times?
We want people from other cultures as well because, again, the representation of Calgary. Just like, when you're coming into any job, anything that you bring, the experiences that you bring, you're going to be able to relate to people. So that's phenomenal. But again, that's not necessarily the bread and butter of the job is English. We are in an English-speaking country. And again, those of us who come from other countries understand that. We know that. Because we spend the time and the effort, learning and all of that. And so, but it's not just the written, because sometimes you can write at a very high, like my writing looks pretty fancy, I gotta say. But the spoken is totally different, especially when you're having to process the nuances of having the criminal code and is this actually the correct thing? And then you've got people yelling and shouting and whatever. Everything's got to be done so quickly. So having those languages is an asset, absolutely an asset. But the majority of it is the safety between you and I. I need to be able to understand what you're saying when you're under stress. When we're on that, that call where there's a code call where you are under enormous pressure and you need to tell people where you are, what's happening, be able to relay to EMS, Try to
Right
call
now.
the resources, and you need to do it right now. That needs to be done in English.
And paint that picture for the incident
Paint
commander,
that picture
right? So
really
they can make good
quickly
decisions.
so that decisions are made for resources to be. That needs to be done in English and needs to be done very quickly, and you are jacked up because there's so much going on, the processing of that. And so I think it's important for people to understand that before they come in.
For sure.
To understand that that can be worked on.
Yes.
That is not something that is, you're a one and done. Those skill sets can be increased and improved. So, but if we can understand that that's the expectation, the mentorship gives you some tips and tricks, and these are the struggles. Paint the picture of what policing is about for people to understand that.
Yeah.
And to understand that just because this might be something that you're struggling with now, it is not a one and done. You still have time. And then you go away and you work on that skill set. That skill set will only make you better moving forward. And in classes, when the expectation is this high and you're moving through things really quickly, that is absolutely the thing that you will come out is going, I am glad I took the time to increase my skill set. And then when you get on the job, it's so much smoother. You're going to be a more successful applicant
For sure.
if you spend the time working on this skill set. This is like every other skill set.
Dayle, I remember seeing you when you first came up on your secondment. You had your plan, you had your task, and you got it done. That's exactly who you are. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about you is that you're goal-driven, but you actually have a plan, you execute the plan, you get the task done, and you move on to the next one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years from now?
When I grow up?
When you grow up.
When I grow up. There are some things that I'm going back and forth with. Recruiting would be great because I just love the energy that you guys bring. And again, I think that
Sometimes I'm a lot.
Amen.
my cup runneth over.
My cup runneth over.
Recruiting, moving forward on the job, just with, maybe moving forward to promotion or like whatever. Any of the things that come forward that just give you an opportunity to better yourself, I'm in.
Amazing.
When you're done, what do you want your legacy to be? What goals would you have wanted to accomplish by the time your career is done?
Legacy. My legacy is always about adding value to people. Every moment of every day, you see somebody in the hallway and they look good today because they put effort in, tell them.
Yeah.
You see somebody struggling and whatever it is that's happening in their lives, give them a positive something. Add value to people around you. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if they're homeless on the street. It doesn't matter if it's somebody that is struggling in life, somebody that's high on top of whatever. We can never have enough positive output towards people. There's 100 times in the day, you can have something positive. One negative thing will throw you off your game.
You get to make the
You've gotta
choice.
add value to
Absolutely.
people. So I would hope that after I'm gone, people go, that chick added value. Whether it's to my day, whether it's to whatever. Like we can come up with all kinds of, it's not about the physical things that I add to people. It's about the value that you add. And so, after I retire, I would love to be able to do life coaching. And again, it's about adding value to people's lives. What is it that I can do to continue to help people move themselves forward? We've all got it. We've all got something inside of us. Sometimes you just need a crew to help you along the way.
I love it. I think we'll end it there.
Dayle,
I just love that final message. That's perfect.
I don't think we can end it any other
No.
way. I caught myself just listening to you and watching you go through your authentic range of emotions. You're a real person. You're an authentic person. I'm super proud to call you a friend, a colleague. I would work with you anytime. And I love seeing you at the gym. I enjoy every part about you. And I just want to thank you for coming in today and sharing who you are, because Dayle Binet's the best part of your day. Let's go.
Thanks, Dayle.
Right
Thank
on,
you
Dayle.
guys
Thanks
so
a lot.
much. Thank you.
I can't, your face right now, it's just killing me. But they were just making fun of me before we started this about my facial expressions and how the whole time I'm talking to Dayle, the people's eyebrow is just going higher and higher and higher because I'm so engaged in her and she has so much energy and The Maya Angelou quote, I think that she said is just so Dayle, the way she makes you feel, right? She comes to Run with a Recruiter. She brings everybody's energy up. She brings the positivity with everything she says, everything she does. She leads by example. I could listen to her talk all day. And the one story, even as a little kid, she's 6 years old or whatever, and she gets thrown in the dirt. And the only thing going through her little 6-year-old little girl mind is, I need to get up.
Not today.
Not today.
Yeah.
I don't belong here. I need to get up. So just some of the way, like her mantras that she almost talked about in the interview, I need to get up. How you make people feel. Put up your hand. You know what I mean? Like when opportunities come, volunteer. I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like I could listen to her talk all day.
Exactly the kind of person that we're looking to serve the city of Calgary. Serve it queen. 100% all day, every day. She is the queen. And her mindset is on service. It's been on service since that day that she was in that convoy from South Africa over to Zimbabwe, and the fact that it didn't even impact her. I personally enjoy the fact that whatever emotion that she's experiencing in the moment is authentic and it's real. Like when she's intense, she's intense.
Don't mess with her.
When there's something that's upsetting her, she is not afraid to show that.
Totally.
The one thing that she didn't bring up that I do know is one of her mantras, and I'm probably going to ruin it, but it's basically the struggle we face is not the flag that we fly.
Yeah.
She's the kind of person that she meets a struggle head on, she develops a plan, she understands her task, and she gets it done, and then she moves on. Yeah. Understanding that there's going to be bumps in the road along the way. I enjoy being around her all the time, and seeing her at Run with a Recruiter and seeing her engage with people, even just those basic, small, like off-the-desk conversations. She's into the moment. She's into helping everybody. She wants to leave everybody better after the moment that she spent with them. We're lucky to have her, Ange. I'm very proud to know her. I love seeing her at the gym. We're lucky that she's on the job with us.
She's a beast.
She is a beast. She's awesome.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
I'm better for having known her, and I'm glad that I get to call her a friend.
Yeah, I was super excited to share her story, and I can't wait for the next one.
Let's go.